pictorial historian who played an integral role in capturing South Africa's struggle for freedom during apartheid. He died at the age of 89 at his home in Spain over the weekend after suffering a stroke. Schadeberg, who is a chief photographer at Drum magazine, is responsible for capturing many of the country's most iconic images, in particular Nelson Mandela. We're now joined via Skype live from Spain by his wife Claudia Schadeberg. Claudia, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the SABC News channel. But firstly, our condolences to you and the family.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, so talk to us about your husband a bit. I mean, really, there is so much that one read about him, and of course, a number of images that we have seen that he has produced. How should South Africans remember him?
Well, I think he documented some of the key moments in South African history. He started photographing Nelson Mandela in 1941 at the ANC Bloemfontein conference. In 1942, he covered the Defiance campaign. He was about one of the only photographers who covered the Defiance campaign. So he did many aspects of the Defiance campaign. 1955, he did the Women's March to Pretoria, the anti-caste march, which was significant. And he covered the treason trial in 1958. So and then the Sharpeville funeral, and also the rise and fall of Sophiatown, which was also historically important. So up to he left South Africa in 1964. So up to that time, he did some of the key moments which were hardly covered before. From 1984 onwards back, he did cover many social issues and social justice issues, which he did all his life, including the poverty gap in Johannesburg and the conditions on South Africans' farms. Those are both quite big projects. He also looked at Kliptown. He did a profile and portrait of Kliptown. So those are the things he covered. He also covered the positive side and the joyful side of black life in the 50s. Jazz was one of his big themes. He did a lot of jazz images. And we also did many documentaries. That was from the 80s. Much was about jazz, much was about black social, cultural and political life.
Yeah, he really did play an integral role in capturing South Africa's moments from apartheid during apartheid, I beg your pardon, to where we are now. And we understand that in the midst of all that, he faced so much rejection from white photo editors when he started out. Talk to us about this.
Well, he wasn't really accepted by the white world, particularly because they didn't understand what he was doing in the black world, but he was totally accepted by the black world. So that was very heartening for him, and he wasn't too bothered by that. So he just carried on documenting what he thought was interesting.
Mm-hmm. What was it like to be his wife? How was he like as a husband?
He was quite a perfectionist and a very driven, passionate person who stopped at nothing to achieve what he wanted to achieve. He spent his whole life documenting social issues, social injustice. And as a person, yes, very driven, very driven. What can I say? We spent our whole life working.
And I'm sure, of course, you've got great memories of him as a husband, rather than being this, a photographer of note that he was.
Well, he was a very compassionate person, a very generous person. But I can't distinguish between the work and the personal life because it was all intertwined. We worked together for over 36 years on projects, and so our life was our work almost. So it all blended together.
So how are you planning to sort of make sure that his legacy lives on, as you say that you've worked together with him for over 36 years?
Well, I will carry on doing what I've always been doing. My work won't change. I will carry on promoting his work. We have a show at the moment in Valencia. We have one coming up in Vienna, and we have one coming up in Paris. So I will be organising all that. So he wrote his memoir 3 years ago called The Way I See It, which is an interesting look at his life. And that we hope somebody's interested possibly making a film of it. I've got 7 decades of documentary photography here, and we're always working on it. We always have requests, so we carry on. I carry on, basically.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we know that his memory will live on through his work. But as a family, as you say that you will still continue to promote his work, how, on the other hand, are you sort of planning to honor his memory?
Well, I think exhibitions are a good way of honouring his memory. We've had amazing a flood of responses from various newspapers and magazines around the world on his death. And so internationally, he's got a name, and various museums have got collections of his work. I will try and approach other museums. It would be nice if South Africa perhaps eventually found a home for some of the work, a permanent home. So I'm looking at different options.
And you made mention of magazines. We know that he was chief photographer at Drum Magazine, and we know that the magazine this year announced that it will be publishing in a digital format only going forward. That, of course, in a move that's been described as the end of an era. Talk to us about his feelings following that announcement.
Well, for him, the most interesting time on Drum Magazine was the 50s, and after 59 or so, it sort of went downhill. So I don't think it didn't seem to have the same flavour as it did in the 50s with investigative stories. So it changed its character, I think. So he was just happy that they had he thought the heyday was in the 50s.
And we know, of course, that there are always concerns when a person is no more. People start talking and saying that, yes, this was an iconic person who was never celebrated. From where you're sitting as his wife, would you say that his life was appreciated and celebrated enough?
Well, he was happy and content with the work he did. We had a lot of amazingly good feedback from many people in South Africa and around the world. I think perhaps it would be nice to have more of a recognition. He got an award for his memoir, which was very nice. He is recognized by the ICP, the International Center of Photography in New York, for a Lifetime Achievement Award. We went to New York for that, and then he got the Lifetime Achievement Award for Leica Gallery. So he's had quite a lot of accolades. It would perhaps be nice a bit more in South Africa, but who knows?
All right, time constraints, I'm afraid we have to leave it at that, Claudia, but we thank you so much for taking the time, and once again, our condolences to yourself and the family.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much indeed. Claudia Schadeberg, a wife to Jurgen Schadeberg, an iconic photographer who captured many of the country's most iconic moments, images, particular that of Dada Nelson Mandela. A quick break.